So my name is Rick Reiffer. Give a little bit of my back history. I met my first wife when I was in high school. We were high school sweethearts. Got married at the end of college. Had 3 kids together, Alex, Aubrey, and Emma. On June 23, 2017, my life was turned upside down. My wife, Carla, went out to do a training bike ride for the triathlon that she was in. I went out a little bit before her, and so she kind of said, when I get back, I won't be here. And I said, okay, we'll get pizza when you come back. I got back and it'd been a long day, so I took a short little nap, and I woke up about 7:15. Based on the timing, she should have been home, so I asked the kids if they'd seen Mom. No idea where she was, so I got in the car to drive out. That's when my life completely was turned upside down. I drove down about 3/4 of a mile and hit a road closed sign, or a person monitoring the road to keep the road closed. And I got out just asking, hey, I'm looking for my wife on a bike. And this person told me, hey, just wait over here. I don't know what's going on, but I'll contact somebody down there. Well, it turns out that my wife was involved in a hit and run bicycle accident at the end of her ride on the way home. And I was about to find out that she was killed in that process. I walked through a lot of immediate unknowns. I had to start calling everybody that I knew. Of course, when you call people with that sort of news, you don't say it just once. You say it twice. You say it 3 times because they don't hear it on the other end of the phone either. And every person that I contacted, it was 2 or 3 times. I think Carla's been killed in a hit and run accident. So had to schedule the funeral home that night. And then I had to wait for the coroner to come down and confirm a bunch of information about the passing and what was going to happen with the process. Obviously, it was very shocking. Had family and friends over, had the pastor over because he actually is the one that told my kids for me, which I was very thankful for. That started a process of saying goodbye to, at that point, the love of my life. The next morning, I had to do a gift of life interview to talk about her organ donation that we were gonna do with her. After that hour-and-a-half interview was done, I had to go to the funeral home and spend the 2.5 hours preparing for all the details of the coming week, the visitation and the funeral, and determining which cemetery we were gonna bury her in. All of that had an element of shock to it. I remember not crying a lot during that process because it was just overwhelming. I was coming to grips with the fact that I lost my wife. I am now a single dad of 3 kids that were dependent solely on me. There was just an unknown future. There was a loss of a lot of dreams and plans that we had been planning for. We had trips planned for retirement. All of that ended in an instant. On that Thursday, we held the funeral. And then life changed. For the first 2 or 3 weeks, there was, a lot of people, they were doing meals for me, and people would check up and make sure. But eventually, you realize that everyone else goes on with their life. It was very traumatic even for the people that knew Carla, but they don't live it in a day-to-day basis. Every time I went to bed, she wasn't there. Every time I woke up, every time the kids needed a ride somewhere, you realize how much interaction you have with the loved one. In that time, met with another gentleman that had gone through a similar incident in a car accident 2 years previously. He had lost his wife. He had 2 little kids. And we were able to do lunch, and he gave me experiences that he had. He told me about the feelings he had. By the time I met with him, he had actually remarried, so he talked to me about what that type of process was for him. In sharing his feelings, validated a lot of things that I was already starting to feel, and over the next few months would feel on many occasions. The biggest one probably was when he talked about the time he was driving down the road and looked at other people, and he was still in his grief. And he looked and he saw the people just living their life. They weren't in grief. Why were they not concerned about this traumatic thing that happened to him? And it was kind of a dawning point for him. I experienced the same thing, right? You start to interact with people, you go back to work, your life picks up, but it's not the same. I also attended a program called Ellie's Place in Grand Rapids, where it was for my kids, but the adults got together, and I was able to meet with other people that had lost a spouse. So they put adults based on what the type of loss was. It was unnerving the first meeting that I went to, because I remember thinking, I'm a married man. I need to tell Carla about this, and I don't belong in this group. And even though logically I knew that that wasn't the case, those were the feelings I had as I sat and listened to other people tell their story. Over the first 3 or 4 meetings, eventually those feelings kind of went away, and I started to look forward to just the time together with other people that weren't just being sympathetic. Not that sympathy isn't a good thing, but they could actually understand because they had been through a very similar traumatic event. When you share some of the feelings that you have, like not being able to fall asleep, or I would work from home in the mornings, and there was many mornings where I got almost nothing done at work because I was crying most of the morning. My coworkers never saw it because by the time I went into work, I had expressed those feelings to the point where I could function again. Without that expression, there was no way that I would function in a normal process or normal day-to-day life. And then being able to express those similar feelings to others that had experienced those and hear their stories, which reaffirmed the feelings that I had, was so immensely helpful. For me, the process of healing involved a couple steps. One is I've got some very good friends that I do life with. The event brought us closer together, and so we were able to share life more than we had been. I also did some counseling because the event that I went through included the person being caught and having to go to court, and crime scene investigations, scene pictures, and having to testify in court. All stuff that you don't necessarily associate with grief, but it put stress into the grief process for me. So I went to some professional counseling for a while to just work through some of those things. Like, do I see the pictures of the actual incident? Because I had that option. And I had a very real struggle mentally of, she was at the kitchen table. So when I saw her in the casket, she doesn't look like she just got hit by a car. And so my mental problems of rectifying that had to be overcome while still dealing with all the emotional grief. And so that I needed professional help with. For me, some of the healing actually started the next night after the event. My wife, Carla, and I had done youth group for 20 years. And because of our involvement, the youth group was on a mission trip at the time. They actually stopped and told the students about what had happened. And as a direct result of my wife's passing, one of the girls in that group gave her life to Christ. It didn't take away any of my pain, but it did give a joy that most people wouldn't understand. Because she didn't die for nothing. I knew where she was, and I knew the testimony of what she had done would be brought forth. There are many stories that I have that I can look back now on how God has used this event to change people's lives around me, which continues to help me as I move forward, because I still have some of those lost dreams, some of those lost hopes, some of those things that Carla will never hold her first grandchild. She won't be there when her daughters walk down the aisle, at least physically here with us. And so when I also look at the impact of things that have happened, that I know that if she wouldn't have been lost at that time, those things wouldn't have happened the way that they did. God was able to use that event in my life. It didn't take away the pain, but it makes the pain much more bearable when you know that God is using it for His glory. One of the things that I experienced shortly after going back to work is one of my coworkers had turned out that he had lost his wife to cancer on the same day that I lost my wife to the hit and run. He was about a year from retirement, and he came over to my desk, and I remember him looking at me and saying, "I don't know how you are dealing with 3 kids at home." And what I explicitly remember is telling him, "I don't know how you go home to a house that only has memories and no noise to it." It's not that the noise is magical or that people are magical in any way, shape, or form. You're still going to experience your pain. You're still going to experience anger, heartache, all the general things that you experience with grief. But if you do it in community, it gives you a release. It gives you hope that what you're experiencing isn't just what unique to you. It is something that is the way God created us. So for me, having that time where I talked to other people that had experienced it, affirming my feelings, affirming the things that I was thinking and the processes I was walking through, and watching others do the same thing. And each one's unique. So it's not like we were all just saying exactly the same thing, but you could relate to it. The one thing that I never heard much talked about in grief, because you hear about the pain and the suffering and the anger, is there is hope. It doesn't feel like it always when you're in the moment. The Lord has blessed me with a new wife, 3 stepkids that I've been able to be a spiritual leader for, an opportunity to serve in a new church. Like I said, lots of blessings that He gave me, and just the hope that life is going to continue is there. And talking to people that are ahead of you in the process gives you hope. You're able to give hope to those that are behind you in the process as you walk through it, because grief is a process. It's not a thing that you just deal with and is done with. There are still days that I wake up and things catch you off guard. Things that you never expected will catch you off guard. And having the support and the hope from other people that have said, "Oh yeah, I remember when I did X, Y, and Z," is just something that you can't stress enough for those that want to try and tough it out and do it alone. Don't do it.